This is our daughter, Valencia. She's 6 years old and addicted to travel. How's this possible? How do we know? And if you like to travel but you feel like kids are holding you back, please make sure you fasten your seatbelt securely, insert the metal tab into the buckle, and tighten by pulling the strap because you're going on an adventure with us. Valencia's introduction to traveling internationally started when she was just 9 months old, and let's be honest, she hardly remembers it. In reality, the steps were initiated even before that, because we needed to get her a passport.
Oh, who are we? Well, we are Valencia's parents, or at least that's basically how we've been known by the other parents at her school since she was 2 years old.
For real though, I'm Josh and this is Kalie. We've been living and traveling abroad since 2009. We've been to almost 100 countries, and Valencia is now at 33. By the way, Valencia is also known by her nickname Sia, which we'll likely use from here on.
Sia first boarded an airplane in October 2020 as we moved from the United States to Portugal. Although we had traveled a bit around the US by car before this was her first flight, and it was a long first one to have. We flew from Miami to Paris, then from Paris to Porto. So what kinds of things did we do to prepare for this trip, and how did Sia do? Let's jump into that. Before flying, I requested a seat with a bassinet. In larger airplanes, there are areas to fix a bassinet to the wall. If you have a child under 2, this is the best place to get for long flights. You see, under 2, they fly free, but they have to sit on your lap. Having the bassinet allows for more space for them, a break from holding them the whole time, and the best part, having them sleep. There's no extra cost for this either, so if you can get this seat, it's the best. Alternatively, you could have your baby in a bucket car seat in the seat next to you, but then you're paying for the extra seat. It's nice because they can sleep and you're comfortable, but it comes at a cost. For us, the seating arrangements were perfect. There were 2 seats in front of the wall for the bassinet. Since Josh had pincho, he had to sit in the row behind me because dogs need to go under the seat in front of you, and where the bassinet seating is, there are no seats in front of you. Nobody was sitting next to me, so that meant once we got up in the air, I could use the extra seat to put much needed items on to what those items are in a second. Long flights can often get cold, so having your baby properly dressed is important. I put Sia in some comfy PJs that were a zip-up onesie of long sleeves and pants. She runs hot, so this was plenty, but if she would get cold easily, then I would have layered a bit more. We also intentionally took a night flight in hopes she would sleep a lot. Sia has always been a good sleeper, so that's exactly what happened. Since I had the bassinet, she could lay down, but here's the bad thing. Anytime we hit turbulence and the seatbelt sign came on, I had to remove her from the bassinet and buckle her to me. Before flying, they give you a special small buckle that loops into your seatbelt, so they have their own while you hold them. So obviously the downside is I had to pick her up when we hit turbulence, which unfortunately happened a few times. So as gently as I could, without trying to wake her up, I would lift her out of the bassinet and hook her onto me. Only one time did she wake up and lightly fuss before I rocked her back to sleep in my arms. So it wasn't terrible, but if you have a finicky sleeper, then this could be stressful. So that extra seat next to me ended up being very nice because I could lay out all the essentials and be prepared. I had extra blankets, stuffies, and toys ready to grab and distract if needed, along with Binky's and of course her bottle. Having the main things that I could just grab and not have to rummage through or look for made it much easier to mitigate any meltdowns. Now obviously this was my first time doing this, so I wasn't a pro. I learned from other moms who did it before me. Sia was such a chill baby that we had 0 problems on the flight, which was a blessing, but I do think there were certain things we did beforehand that really helped. For example, the night flight worked out for us. Since we knew she was a good sleeper, we were banking on the air pressure not being an issue, and it wasn't, but I did have pacifiers at the ready. This is super important for the pressure. Also, having plenty of milk was important. I pumped right before getting on the airplane. Nowadays, many large airports have special feeding and pumping pods or rooms. So research the airport you're flying out of and find where those are. If they don't exist, look to see if there are family restrooms or even handicap restrooms, which give you more space. Doing this right before I got on the airplane meant that I didn't have to stress personally, and I had fresh milk for the takeoff. Also, the great thing is that pumps and liquid formula and breast milk can all be taken on the plane as extra carry-ons. I had 2 soft coolers full of frozen breast milk that I brought. I was not leaving all that hard work behind. Now, what's funny about this is when we arrived in Paris, we had to go through another security check, and they took every single bag out and ran it through some special machine. Thankfully, we weren't in a rush, and I could just resituate as needed. So Sia slept most of the flight to Paris. I was prepared with all of her favorite things just in case. Once we got to Paris and were waiting for our flight to Porto, it was daytime, so I changed her into normal clothes that were layered, and then we gave her plenty of age-appropriate stimulation around the airport, so by the time we got on the next flight, she was ready for a nap.
After arriving in Portugal and knowing how restricted air travel was at the time, we ended up doing a lot more car, train, and bus travel, which brings its own set of pros and cons. First of all, traveling by car is awesome because we can pick up and go whenever we want. There's hardly any real rush because we're not fixed to a bus or train schedule. We can stop whenever we want to eat something or to go use the bathroom. Let's be honest, at this early stage with Sia, it's really nice. She's in diapers, doesn't tell us when she needs to go to the bathroom, so it's all gas and no brakes. The downside to driving as she got even a little bit older was how to entertain her or console her if she got upset. Most of the time, we would both be in the front seat as driver and co-pilot, and if Sia got fussy, the co-pilot would have to loosen the belt and try to calm her down and figure out if she was hungry, bored, or wet. So we started planning the driving times around her nap schedule so she could sleep a majority of the time. This is not something that we have to worry about when it comes to taking a bus or a train. Having someone else responsible for getting us from point A to point B meant that we could spend more time with Sia on the journey to the destination. We could talk, read to her, play games, feed her, and as she got a little older, she always had a little more space or at least a tray table to play with her toys. Starting around 2 years old, we began to communicate with Sia a lot more when it came to preparing her mentally for travel. We started telling her about the trip days, weeks, or even months in advance. This has really worked for us and her. Kids, like most people in general, like predictability because it makes us feel safer. Sure, we like spontaneity and surprises, but when it comes to such a big change or variance from everyday life, the mind needs a little buffer time to prepare, right?
Right, so telling her the purpose of travel also became very important. We would talk about who we were going to visit, like, for example, your best friend Maya in London, or Japan and Gigi are meeting us in Asia, or we're gonna go see your cousins back in the US. And importantly, we would tell her that we're gonna try this new food, like rice noodles in Asia.
Okay, the rice and noodle one is funny because of course she eats a lot of rice in Portugal and pasta in general because, well, most kids do. So we say rice because it's something familiar. And if we had said pork fried rice before she had a really good concept of what that is, she might have rejected it outright. But when we got to Malaysia and Singapore and wanted to eat some foods that were like fried rice dishes, she was just fine with it. It just couldn't be too spicy. With noodles, we still have to remind her from time to time that pasta and noodles are basically the same thing. It's just coming from different countries, and it's done a little differently in each country. I couldn't just say we're going to eat ramen because she hadn't been exposed to it enough yet. Her very first time eating ramen was actually in Dusseldorf. We went for a soccer match in the tune-up to the 2022 World Cup, and if you don't know, Dusseldorf has a huge Japanese population. Because of that, and the fact that good ramen is one of my favorite dishes on the planet, we knew that we were going to eat it regardless of how Sia felt about it. We found a cute little hole-in-the-wall Japanese ramen spot and got 2 dishes and some edamame, knowing that Sia would at least eat that. She's had edamame before and loves veggies in general. Little did I know she'd love ramen noodles. She basically ate half of my dish. I didn't care, to be honest. I was happy and I was proud as well. We had discovered, or better yet, unlocked a new food for her that I love too. How did we not know she'd love ramen? It combines 2 things that she loves, noodles or pasta, and like any good tuga, soup. Because traveling unlocks all sorts of different flavors for all sorts of different national dishes around the world, we also tried to relate it to something that she already knew, and it's really worked for us. By the time Sia turned 3, she had already been in school in Portuguese language and started understanding things in both English and Portuguese. Okay, her English at this point is much better than her Portuguese, but she's still absorbing a lot from the 2 languages. She wasn't always comfortable speaking in Portuguese in front of us like she is now, but she would at this point already say sim, não, obrigada, or bom dia, among other common phrases. That's when we introduced the concept of different countries use different languages. This wasn't that tricky, but it's probably because she was already exposed to English and Portuguese. No matter where we travel, as she's gotten even older, she'll ask, what language do they speak here? English or Portuguese? At which point we have to introduce her to a third language if that applies. So this step with Sia meant that we would introduce very simple words or numbers up to 5 or 10 if we knew it. When we were in France, it's merci and bonjour. When we're in Spain, it's gracias and buenos dias. But if we're in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, we'll let her know that a lot of people speak English, even though their first language might be Bahasa. Also, as she's gotten older, when we try to share more complex phrases, we'll ask, how do you say this in Portuguese? Just to be sure of her understanding, going from her mother tongue to her second language. It's been a fun experiment, to be honest.
That's right. And there's something else that's connected here when it comes to travel and trying new things. We try not to talk negatively about new foods, even if we have our own preferences, at least before Sia tries it. After she tries it, if she doesn't like it and one of us don't like it, it's okay to share our opinions. So what I mean is we try to talk positively first. We do this about travel in general and especially pre-travel. We talk about all the positive things we get from traveling and even bring up past experiences that were positive. We think this has really reinforced the idea in Sia that traveling is good. We still want to make sure she's comfortable though, so we always let her choose her favorite stuffy to bring. She can pack some of her small toys and of course the blanket she sleeps with. We also loved traveling with a pop-up tent she slept in. We actually ended up getting rid of her crib and having her sleep in it because when we did travel, the bed was the same, so that consistency meant even if we were in a different country, she was still in her own bed. Whether we're traveling in Portugal, the US, or anywhere else in the world, there's something that we have to do for Sia that gives her some time each day to do what she enjoys. It makes sense, right? Could you imagine if we just dictated every hour of travel or vacation to her? Okay, 9 a.m. breakfast, 9:30 to 12 sightseeing, 12 to 1 lunch, 1 to 4:30 more sightseeing, and so on. Literally, nobody would like it, and young kids, older kids, and adults would hate that. So we give her at least one, but often several times a day, an opportunity to do something she wants to do. What that usually becomes is finding a playground in a new city to play for 15 to 30 minutes. Playing for 30 minutes to an hour in the hotel room is another one. Yes, the hotel room. She'll start playing with a coffee and tea set and have tea parties with her toys or serve it up to us. Another thing that's become part of our search criteria when looking for hotels is a pool. If a pool is involved, we have to set aside time for that. We also make it a point to not just sightsee and do museums, which might be kind of boring for her, but to find the aquarium, science hands-on museum, and things in a city that are specifically for kids. We're pretty sure this dedicated time to decide what she'd like to do reinforces to her that traveling is fun and gives her a chance to do stuff that she enjoys.
At this point in our timeline, Sia is approaching 4 years old and 20 different countries visited. A couple new patterns have emerged, and depending on what kind of parent or passenger you are, is where you're going to agree, disagree, or even thank us. Back in 2019, before Sia was even born, we were living in Singapore, and one of my best guy friends had a 3-year-old boy. He's an American, his wife's Canadian, and from time to time, they would go back to North America for visits. Now, I knew how active their son was. He's a bright, talkative kid that's very sweet, but he's a kid. He can't always control the volume of his voice or emotions. So I asked my friend, what in the world do you do with Peter on a long flight like that? And he said, Josh, we broke down and just gave him a phone to watch something. We monitored his screen time and we had little breaks, but basically he watched the whole time. Kalie and I began to take that same approach with Sia around this age. When she got her phone, she's pretty quiet unless something funny happens on the screen, at which point she bursts out into laughter, maybe a little too loud. She wears headphones and doesn't always realize how loud she is, either laughing or asking for a snack. All in all, she's quiet though, and people around her can be left in peace. Without a device, she would definitely be louder on planes because she'll be talking out loud and playing with her little figures. So it's cute to watch her, but it's not everyone's cup of tea. So we try to limit that, especially on planes. So we're giving her screen time, but we take breaks. We also make sure her phone has offline games that she can play so she's not just watching something the whole time. She's also playing games, and at this age, we found plenty of educational games. She's learning the ABCs, being read to and answering questions about books, playing matching games, and so on. So a mix of watching and playing with built-in breaks. When we take a break, we warn her. Maybe we'll say, this is your last show. Finish it, and then we're gonna take a break. Or we'll say, you've got 5 minutes, and then we're gonna take a break. We don't wanna just take her phone without warning her.
One thing we always make sure we have when we're moving about a city is snacks. That way we aren't stopping at a restaurant or store all the time. It also gives her something to do and focus on while sitting in her stroller. We've already mentioned how we would bring comfort from home and snacks on the go, but little did we know how much we would rely on these types of snacks. Well, it's twofold.
Well, 3 if you count the fact that we're able to eat the snacks.
We're able to eat the snack too, which is good, but the least important thing, so number 1, Sia has something familiar to eat that gives her a sense of comfort. And 2, we have some kind of food in the hotel or Airbnb just in case we can't make it to a grocery store when we arrive or a new place or whatever. We've been caught out several times at this point where we've traveled to a nice country or city, arrived late, not been able to get food that she wants or likes. So having these familiar snacks when she's hungry at an odd hour or when we can't go to a store always saves us. And you never know when the grocery stores might be closed for a day or two around the holiday. Having plenty of snacks from Portugal has been clutch for us on a number of occasions at this point. We just travel with a relatively small food bag just in case. That brings us to the next thing that really works for Sia, bringing her metal water bottle from home. We always have water when we're out. It allows her to stay hydrated, of course, but it also allows us to reduce waste and costs. We don't have to buy a plastic bottle of water everywhere we go. And speaking of packing, there's been an evolution of packing for Sia that's occurred almost as milestone events as she gets older every year.
Age 4, we've stopped needing to pack diapers for number 2s.
Okay, let me explain the diaper thing. She didn't need to sleep in diapers or wear them during the day as she would use the potty, but she fought going number 2 in the toilet. So when she was about 3.5, I asked her when she was going to go on the toilet. She says she would when she turned 4. I said, okay, deal. But the day you turn 4, diapers are gone. We literally only had to pack diapers for her to go number 2 and then throw away. The day she turned 4, the diapers, we were done. There were a few tears that day, but the next day she was fine and diapers thankfully became a thing of the past for us. Around the age of 4, we had gotten this smaller collapsible chair with wheels that's not really a stroller, so that's why we called it the rider. It was great because it was much smaller and lightweight. We could have her pop off and on if we need to get on escalators so we didn't have to find the elevators. It was a good transition from a stroller, but now that she's older, she doesn't need it anymore.
And we started to let her pack her own bag so that she could take responsibility and some ownership over what she brought to travel. Age 5, she started carrying her own bag. If it felt a little heavy, we would talk about why and what packing choices she made and how it impacted her comfort with her backpack on her back or rolling her suitcase around. She helped choose the outfits she wanted to take and the toys that were traveling with us. Age 6, this was a big one for me. She no longer needed a stroller or what we call the rider. Okay, we can't cover as much ground, but it can be cumbersome to travel on planes with stuff like that. Once it's no longer a necessity, I feel unshackled. And if you're a returning viewer, you've probably noticed that Sia doesn't use it in videos anymore and is always walking by us. Valencia is quickly on her way to 40 countries visited. Later this year, we're taking a Caribbean cruise with family, so she will add 4 more to her list. She's also expressed interest in visiting Australia around Christmas break, which would be a blast. Will we be able to survive that flight? Stay tuned, but I think so. She's a seasoned traveler at this point and continues to improve and adapt as she gets older. We went out to Southeast Asia already with her, so what's a little further?
We don't always put videos out about kids, but we do enjoy sharing pieces of our life with you and tips and tricks that we learn along the way. We hope to see you in the next video here that's been chosen based on your viewing habits. And until next time, let's get moving.